Hello, Aquarius, and welcome to Soul Guidance with Adriana. I'm a transformational life coach and abundance consultant, and I've got an intuitive message for you today. We're going to start with your animal oracle card. This is Swan, and the word is beauty. Interesting message here. The meaning of the card is a little bit different than what I'm going to tell you, but what we're looking at is really looking inside for answers and understanding that beauty comes from within. Okay, this means that's a loaded sentence, right? But I find it so fascinating that this woman is blindfolded here. There's a vulnerability in this because she's not wearing any clothes. She's naked, but she's close to the outside, which tells us that beauty is not always apparent from the surface. You know, something can look beautiful, but then not be so beautiful when you look closer, or something can look totally repellent, and then when you actually look at it, no, actually that's okay. All right. And I'm sure you have examples in your life of relationships or situations which may have looked so nice, and then when you start to get closer, you're like, uh-oh, what is that? Or ones where you're like, really that? Or really him? Ugh. And then all of a sudden you find this hidden treasure. So to pull this together, this energy is asking you to look deeper, to look beyond just the surface level, and to look into yourself more for what feels right and beautiful to you. Okay, let's look at, lovely, starting the reading with Ace of Cups. These two cards are talking to each other. The Ace of Cups asks you to really tap into self-love, to really tap into that feeling of putting yourself first and knowing that you're connected to a bigger source of love greater than yourself. This card represents connection to source. Another meaning of this Swan card is loving yourself first. Okay? Now, love and beauty are an interesting concept together in astrology that is represented by the planet Venus. What we value, what we love, and who we love. But these two cards are talking about placing that emphasis on you first, always loving yourself first. Let's look at where you're headed, Princess of Swords. Well, we didn't stay in that heart energy for very long, did we? Okay, we have a moment of discernment coming, Aquarius. The Princess of Swords is asking you, eventually you're going to have to look at a situation with a bit more detachment and with less subjective involvement. Man, really struggling with the words today. Okay, you're looking at this situation almost from a scientific, a very cold point of view, as if your heart is not involved at all. But that is why it is important to know where your heart stands on things. Okay, she's not talking about cutting off your heart. She's actually talking about putting the heart first and then allowing that heart energy to inform the mind. But in that process, you may have to kind of detach yourself a little bit, step back, because sometimes when we're in our heart and the emotions are overflowing, or we maybe feel too good, we don't always look with that same detachment. But, you know, I'm fascinated by now these two cards coming together, because she's got this little sash that she's tying around her sword, and it's very similar in color to the blindfold around the woman's head, which says to me that this is taking a different look at the ties between you and either the situation or the people in the situation. Relook at these ties. On one hand, the tie may be blinding you to the truth. You may not be able to see properly because of the tie that's between you. And this Princess of Swords is helping you undo that tie. So you see her eyes are open, her eyes are clear, and the tie is around her sword. But that tells me that her thoughts and the decision that she makes based on those thoughts are still tied up in that tie with the situation or the other person. So even deeper than these two cards, look even deeper. You need to be looking much deeper than what's on the surface, because again, these ties they're not part of you, they're outside of you, and they don't have anything to do with your self-love. There's no ties on this card. The water is unbounded, it's overflowing, there's no restrictions to it. So it's funny, tied down, tied together, tie. I keep coming up with that language of restriction, not being able to see, not being able to think, not being able to feel correctly. So we're looking beyond the ties, looking beyond the superficial ties to the deeper meaning underneath. Okay, let's look at the energy coming in. 3 of Wands. So that's interesting. After all of this inward looking, we have some outward looking at a journey or a new opportunity bringing its head to you. Bringing its head to you. I wanted to say coming to the surface. Kind of funny. So it's very important to resolve where you stand in your heart and where you stand with these ties, because this opportunity may be pulling you away from them. In fact, I believe it will. Look at the direction. Okay? This is going off someplace new. And you may have to make a decision that is going to cut you off from these ties. So it's very important that you have a clear view of what these ties actually are and what these ties are doing to your expansion. All right, let's look at the final healing message. Here's our friend, the Emperor, the Lord. Okay. At the end of all of this, your leadership comes into question. It's your leadership that is being questioned and developed, strengthened, and protected. And with that leadership comes the clear, unapologetic use of boundaries. Okay? With all of these ties and all of this trying to sort out and confusion and all of these, it's all solved with boundaries. You do have to kind of go into this mire for a little bit, into this unclarity to figure out what those boundaries are. But once you have them, this is about learning how to assert these stronger boundaries so that you can provide the best leadership. Being a leader is a difficult position because you don't want to be so out in front or so disconnected from your following that you don't listen to them. There's a receptive principle with these antlers on his head. You still want to listen to others, but you at the same time cannot be swayed by the individual needs and ties and obligations of every tiny little person. Because sometimes what has to be done for the greater good may mean some kind of sacrifice in the short term on the part of someone else. So, this is being careful, because obviously you want to do what's best for everyone, but what's best for everyone is not always catering to them or assuaging them. Okay? So this is a process. This is the direction we're headed. You don't have to feel like you have to go there now. But this shift from eyes shut to eyes completely open and aware, this is a big shift, okay? And it is a process, but I hope that this information will help you because you can see where you're headed. All right, Aquarius, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your time and energy. It's always lovely to hear from you. If you want to leave a comment, that's always welcome and very much appreciated. I send you lots of abundance and lots of blessings this week. Hope they come to you quickly, and I look forward to seeing you next time right here.